When a woman goes silent, most men immediately assume the worst. They interpret the lack of messages, the absence of calls, and the sudden emotional distance as proof that she's completely done. That assumption usually triggers panic, overthinking, and a desperate urge to reach out for reassurance or closure. But silence is rarely as simple as people make it out to be. In many cases, silence isn't the end of emotional investment, it's a pause. It's space being created, not necessarily to forget you, but to observe you. When someone is truly finished, they don't need distance to think, analyze, or feel. They feel nothing, and indifference doesn't require silence filled with tension. It's calm, final, and emotionally empty. Silence often shows up when emotions are still present but unresolved. If she were genuinely done, she wouldn't need to pull back to regain control of her feelings or to see how you respond. She wouldn't care enough to wonder whether you'll chase, collapse, or stay composed. Silence becomes a testing ground where she watches your behavior without interference. Does he respect my decision, or does he panic? Does he spiral emotionally, or does he remain grounded? Does he try to force connection, or does he let space exist without drama? These reactions tell her far more than any conversation ever could. What most men miss is that silence creates contrast. When you're always available, always explaining, always chasing, there's nothing to measure against. But when you step back and allow space, your absence becomes noticeable. Your energy is no longer filling the emotional vacuum, and that vacuum forces reflection. Silence invites curiosity. It gives her time to replay moments, to compare you with others, and to feel the weight of what's missing. That doesn't happen if you rush in to fix things or demand answers. Another crucial factor is control. Silence is often used when someone wants to regain emotional leverage. After an argument or breakup, emotions can feel chaotic. Pulling away allows her to stabilize, to feel safe again, and to see whether she still holds power over you. If you react by chasing or pleading, you confirm that she does. If you remain calm and self-directed, the silence loses its purpose. It no longer works as a tool to regulate emotions or test your strength. Silence also protects feelings that aren't ready to be confronted. Admitting uncertainty is uncomfortable. Admitting lingering attraction is even harder. Distance allows her to avoid those conversations while still keeping the emotional door slightly open. This is why silence is often accompanied by subtle signs, checking your social media, asking mutual friends about you, or reacting emotionally when she hears about your progress. These behaviors don't come from someone who is done. They come from someone who is still emotionally engaged but undecided. The biggest mistake men make during this phase is trying to break the silence prematurely. They treat quiet as a problem to solve instead of a signal to read. In doing so, they reveal insecurity and emotional dependence, which only reinforces the original decision to pull away. Silence, when respected, has a strange effect. It flips the dynamic. Instead of you seeking validation, she begins wondering why you aren't. Instead of you chasing clarity, she starts questioning her own certainty. True closure doesn't require silence filled with tension. It doesn't come with curiosity, checking, or emotional reactions. Real closure feels boring. It's peaceful. There's no testing, no observation, no wondering. So when silence feels heavy, charged, or confusing, it's usually because something is still unresolved beneath the surface. The man who understands this doesn't rush to fill the gap. He uses the space to strengthen himself, knowing that silence often speaks louder than words and reveals far more than most people are willing to admit. When two people share genuine attraction and emotional depth, That connection doesn't simply vanish because a conversation ends or distance appears. Emotional investment leaves a residue. It settles into memory, habit, and feeling, and it fades gradually, not instantly. This is why the idea that someone can wake up one day completely indifferent after real bonding is mostly a myth. When emotions were real, they linger long after the relationship shifts, even if pride, fear, or logic tries to suppress them. People often confuse detachment with emotional resolution. Detachment is frequently a coping mechanism, not a sign of emotional emptiness. When a woman pulls back, it's often because the feelings are still strong enough to create inner conflict. Distance becomes a way to quiet that conflict. If she truly felt nothing, there would be no need to create space. Emotional neutrality doesn't require protection, only unresolved feelings do. This is why emotional investment resurfaces in indirect ways. Instead of direct communication, it shows up through curiosity. She might ask mutual friends about you, casually bring you up in unrelated conversations, or find reasons to check your social media. These actions may seem small, but they reveal ongoing emotional attachment. People don't monitor what they don't care about. They don't track progress, mood, or availability unless something inside them is still connected. Another important aspect is comparison. When emotional bonds existed, new experiences automatically get measured against the past. No matter how much she tries to move forward, moments of familiarity, comfort, or intensity with you become the standard. This comparison doesn't always happen consciously, but it's powerful. If someone else fails to evoke the same emotional response, it quietly reignites memories and questions. Emotional investment lives in these comparisons, even when she insists she's moved on. Time also plays a crucial role. Emotions don't disappear on command. They fade through repetition of new experiences, not through avoidance. When space exists, but growth doesn't replace the emotional bond, the feelings remain dormant rather than gone. That dormancy can be mistaken for closure, but it's more like suppression. And suppressed emotions have a habit of resurfacing, especially when triggered by reminders of growth, confidence, or absence. This is why emotional reactions are more revealing than words. Someone who is truly over you reacts with indifference. There's no irritation, jealousy, or emotional charge. But when emotional investment still exists, reactions leak out. A sharp comment, defensiveness, sudden warmth, or unexpected coldness all point to unresolved feelings. Emotional neutrality doesn't fluctuate, lingering attachment does. Men often sabotage themselves by trying to force clarity during this stage. They ask for explanations, definitions, or emotional confirmation. But emotional investment isn't logical, it's experiential. You don't reason someone back into feeling, you allow space for feelings to reveal themselves. When you stop pushing for answers and instead focus on your own growth and direction, you remove pressure. That lack of pressure allows buried emotions to surface naturally. What's often misunderstood is that emotional investment doesn't mean obligation or commitment. She may still care deeply while believing the relationship shouldn't continue. Those two realities can exist at the same time. This inner contradiction is uncomfortable, and distance helps manage it, but caring doesn't vanish just because a decision was made. It simply goes quiet. The man who understands this doesn't try to revive emotions through words or reassurance. He knows that real attraction responds to presence, strength, and self-respect. Emotional investment fades when someone becomes predictable, needy, or stagnant. It reawakens when growth, mystery, and emotional safety return. Emotions don't follow timelines or ultimatums. They follow perception, experience, and internal alignment. And when real feelings once existed, they rarely disappear without leaving a trail behind. One of the clearest indicators that emotional attachment still exists is not what she says, but how she reacts. Words are easy to control, reactions are not. When someone is truly indifferent, your progress barely registers. There's no emotional spike, no curiosity, no sudden shift in behavior. But when growth, confidence, or success triggers a response, whether positive or negative, it reveals that you still occupy emotional space in her mind. Indifference is quiet, reaction is evidence, growth acts like a mirror. When she sees you improving physically, emotionally, financially, or mentally, it forces comparison, not just between you and other men, but between who you are now and who you were when she had access to you. That contrast can be uncomfortable. It can spark curiosity, regret, pride, or even resentment. Those emotions don't come from someone who no longer cares. They come from someone whose perception of you is being challenged. This is why reactions often appear indirectly. Instead of direct praise or acknowledgement, they show up as subtle jabs, sarcasm, or sudden coldness. She may downplay your progress, question your motives, or act unimpressed. These behaviors are defensive. They're attempts to maintain emotional equilibrium in the face of new information that disrupts her previous narrative. If you were truly irrelevant, there would be no narrative to defend. Another powerful reaction is curiosity. Sudden questions, unexpected check-ins, or increased online attention often coincide with visible self-improvement. Curiosity is emotional energy seeking context. She wants to know what changed, why it changed, and whether the change is real. This isn't about control as much as it is about recalibrating perception. When someone evolves beyond the version she left, it creates uncertainty. And uncertainty draws attention. Jealousy is another reaction that reveals emotional investment. It doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet withdrawal when she hears you're doing well, or discomfort when she sees others respond positively to you. Jealousy doesn't require desire to reunite, but it does require attachment. You can't feel possessive over something you truly don't care about. The emotion itself is proof of unresolved connection. What many men misunderstand is how easily reactions can be misinterpreted as disinterest. Coldness, criticism, or distance are often labeled as rejection. In reality, these responses can be forms of emotional self-protection. Growth threatens the certainty of past decisions. If she left believing you would stay the same, your evolution disrupts that belief. Rather than confront the discomfort directly, the emotion leaks out through behavior. The key is how you respond. Reacting emotionally to her reactions puts you back in a chasing position. Defending yourself, explaining your growth, or seeking validation diminishes the impact of the change. True growth doesn't require an audience. It stands on its own. When you remain calm, grounded, and unaffected by her responses, you reinforce the perception shift. You show that the change is internal, not performative. Consistency matters more than intensity. A sudden spike of motivation followed by regression confirms old patterns. Steady progress over time forces reevaluation. When your growth is sustained, reactions evolve. Initial skepticism may turn into curiosity, which may later become respect. Respect is the foundation of attraction, and it's built through behavior, not conversation. The most important realization is that reactions reveal where emotional energy still flows. You don't need to interpret every signal or analyze every move. The presence of reaction alone tells the story. Indifference doesn't fluctuate. It doesn't spike when you succeed or fade when you disappear. Emotion does. The man who understands this doesn't chase validation or closure. He keeps building, knowing that real change speaks louder than reassurance. Whether she re-enters his life or not becomes secondary. Growth stops being a tactic and becomes an identity, and paradoxically, that's when reactions become strongest because you've become someone she now has to emotionally recalibrate around, instead of someone she can easily dismiss. Power in relationships is rarely about control in the obvious sense. It's about who needs who more, who is emotionally centered, and who can remain calm when things feel uncertain. When a man chases after a woman who has pulled away, he unintentionally communicates that his sense of stability depends on her response. That dependency shifts the balance instantly. It places her in the position of emotional authority and him in the position of seeking approval. Even if she doesn't consciously think in these terms, the dynamic is felt on a deeper level. Chasing usually comes from fear, fear of loss, fear of being misunderstood, fear of finality. That fear fuels behaviors like overtexting, explaining feelings, asking for reassurance, or trying to negotiate attraction. The problem is that attraction doesn't respond to fear. It responds to strength, clarity, and self-trust. When a man chases, he isn't showing commitment, he's showing insecurity, and insecurity erodes respect faster than almost anything else. Walking away doesn't mean indifference or punishment. It means choosing self-respect over emotional urgency. When you stop chasing, you remove the pressure that made the situation heavy in the first place. Pressure suffocates attraction because it forces a decision before emotions are ready. By stepping back, you give space for feelings to breathe and for perception to shift. Silence, when it comes from confidence rather than resentment, is powerful because it communicates emotional self-sufficiency. The moment you stop trying to convince her of your value, you allow her to feel it instead. Value that needs to be argued is already compromised. Value that is lived through boundaries, purpose, and composure doesn't need explanation. When you walk away from emotional chaos and refocus on your direction, you demonstrate that your life is not on hold waiting for someone else to decide your worth. This shift is unsettling for someone who expects you to chase. When she anticipates emotional pursuit and instead encounters calm distance, the script breaks. She's no longer reacting to your emotions. She's reacting to your absence. That absence invites reflection. It raises questions that chasing never does. Why isn't he trying to fix this? Why isn't he panicking? What changed? These questions reassign emotional energy back to her. Walking away also protects your emotional integrity. Chasing often leads to compromises you later regret, lowering standards, tolerating disrespect, or abandoning your values just to keep someone close. Over time, these compromises build resentment, which further damages attraction and self-esteem. Stepping back allows you to act in alignment with who you are, not who you fear becoming alone. It's important to understand that walking away doesn't guarantee reconciliation, and that's precisely why it works. The strength lies in being willing to lose the relationship rather than lose yourself. That willingness creates authentic confidence. Confidence that isn't contingent on outcome is felt instinctively. It's not performative, it's grounded. And grounded confidence is magnetic whether or not she ever returns. Many men confuse walking away with manipulation. True detachment isn't a tactic, it's a decision to stop investing emotional energy where it's not being reciprocated. When you make that decision honestly, without expectation or hidden agenda, the dynamic naturally shifts. She no longer feels responsible for your emotional state, which paradoxically makes interaction feel lighter and safer. Over time, the power balance evens out, not because you took something from her, but because you reclaimed something for yourself. Emotional independence changes how you speak, how you move, and how you respond. Even if no contact ever resumes, you've strengthened the one relationship that determines all others, the one with yourself. And when power is rooted internally rather than externally, it can't be taken away by silence, distance, or uncertainty. Value is often invisible when it's constantly available. When someone has uninterrupted access to your time, attention, and emotional energy, it becomes the baseline. There's nothing to measure against, nothing to miss, and nothing to reflect on. This is why people rarely recognize the full worth of something while it's freely given. It's only when that access is reduced or removed that perspective begins to shift. Absence doesn't create value out of nothing. It reveals the value that was already there. When you step back and stop offering yourself without reciprocation, you interrupt familiarity. Familiarity dulls appreciation. It creates a sense of predictability that feels safe but unremarkable. Once that predictability disappears, the mind fills the gap with comparison. She begins to notice the contrast between life with you and life without you. That comparison doesn't happen immediately. At first, the freedom can feel relieving, but over time, as routines settle and novelty fades, the absence becomes more noticeable. Time plays a critical role because emotional clarity isn't instant. When emotions are high, decisions are reactive. Distance allows emotions to cool and thoughts to settle. In that quiet space, reflection happens naturally. She starts remembering how you showed up, how you made her feel, and how rare certain qualities actually were. This isn't nostalgia, it's recalibration. Without constant interaction, the mind reorganizes memories and reassigns meaning. Comparison becomes unavoidable. New connections are evaluated against the emotional standard you set. Even if she meets someone new, that person is unconsciously measured by how they listen, how they lead, how they handle conflict, and how they make her feel emotionally safe. If the new experience falls short, the contrast sharpens. Scarcity makes these comparisons more intense because the option of returning isn't immediately available. Desire grows when access is limited. What many men misunderstand is that giving more rarely increases value. Overgiving often does the opposite. It removes mystery, reduces tension, and signals low self-prioritization. When you give without boundaries, you teach others how to treat you. Stepping back resets that lesson. It communicates that your time and energy are not unlimited, and that access to you is a privilege, not a guarantee. Silence during this phase isn't about punishment or strategy. It's about allowing time to do what emotional conversations can't. Words can be argued with, dismissed, or misunderstood. Time cannot. Time exposes patterns, reveals absence, and clarifies emotion without debate. When you're no longer present to soften discomfort or fill emotional gaps, she has to face her own feelings without distraction. This process also protects you. Constant availability keeps you emotionally tethered to an outcome you can't control. Stepping back allows you to reclaim your focus and redirect energy toward your own growth. As you build your life, your sense of identity strengthens. That growth doesn't just increase your value in her eyes, it increases it in your own, and self-perceived value is the foundation of how others perceive you. There's a shift that happens when you stop giving time away indiscriminately. Your presence becomes intentional. Your attention becomes selective. This selectivity changes how you show up in all relationships. You listen differently. You respond rather than react. That composure adds weight to your words and meaning to your actions. If she never returns, the lesson still holds. You've learned not to trade your worth for proximity. But if she does reconsider, it's not because you convinced her. It's because time revealed what constant availability concealed. Scarcity didn't create desire, it uncovered it, and the man who understands this doesn't rush to reclaim what left. He allows value to be recognized naturally, knowing that what is truly valued never needs to be chased, it is chosen. When someone leaves your life, they leave a version of you. That distinction is critical. People don't return to what they already understand. They return to what feels new, unfamiliar, and reevaluated. This is why personal transformation matters more than emotional pleading or strategic silence. Growth doesn't pull someone back because you want them. It pulls them back because they no longer recognize you in the same way. Familiarity disappears and curiosity replaces it. True change isn't cosmetic. It's not about posting motivational quotes, sudden gym photos, or exaggerated displays of success. Surface-level shifts are easy to detect and easy to dismiss. Real growth alters how you move through the world. It changes how you respond to stress, how you hold boundaries, and how you prioritize your time. These changes are subtle but powerful. They create a sense that something is different, even if she can't immediately articulate what it is. When she returns or reaches out, it's rarely to reconnect with the past, it's to test the present. She wants to see whether the man she once knew still exists beneath the improvements, or whether that version is gone. This testing isn't malicious, it's instinctive. People need to know whether change is stable before trusting it. Old patterns are comfortable, even when they're unhealthy. New patterns create uncertainty, and uncertainty invites evaluation. This is where many men fail. They revert. They slip back into explaining, accommodating, or seeking validation the moment contact resumes. In doing so, they confirm that nothing fundamental has changed. The growth collapses under pressure, and the door closes again. Sustainable transformation holds firm even when emotions resurface. It doesn't abandon boundaries to regain approval. Becoming unrecognizable doesn't mean becoming cold or detached. It means becoming self-directed. Your choices are guided by values rather than fear. You listen without chasing, speak without persuading, and act without overinvesting. This emotional self-sufficiency is what creates polarity. It shifts the dynamic from pursuit to mutual evaluation. She's no longer the prize, you are both deciding. The paradox is that when growth becomes authentic, outcome stops being the goal. You're no longer improving to win someone back. You're improving because it aligns with who you want to be. That detachment removes pressure. It makes interactions lighter, less charged, and more natural. And paradoxically, that's when attraction has room to return. Testing often shows up as subtle challenges. She may question your intentions, bring up the past, or probe emotional availability. These moments aren't traps, they're checkpoints. She's assessing whether the growth is internal or performative. If you respond defensively or over-explain, it signals fragility. If you remain calm, honest, and grounded, it signals stability. Growth also reframes the past. When you become stronger, clearer, and more confident, past mistakes lose their defining power. They become context, not identity. She no longer sees you as the man who reacted emotionally or lacked direction. She sees someone who learned, adapted, and evolved. That evolution earns respect, and respect is the gateway through which attraction returns. The most important realization is that the door doesn't reopen because you waited long enough or played your cards right. It reopens because you're no longer standing where you were when it closed. Whether she steps through it or not becomes secondary. You've outgrown the need for validation and replaced it with self-trust. When you become unrecognizable, you don't chase the past. You meet the present on your terms. And if she chooses to engage, she does so not because you convinced her, but because she recognizes that the man in front of her is someone she must now qualify herself to be with.